Welcome, friends, from Unibe Talks. In this afternoon, we have this amazing opportunity to share with my dear friends, architects Gonzalo Hoyos from Ecuador, Alessandro Melis from Italy, and Eric Goldenberg from Argentina, but he's now working for some years in the United States, a lot of years, actually. This is the recap of some 4 or 5 days of work we've been doing around our lab Santo Domingo in the Universidad Iberoamericana. Specifically, is the second edition that the School of Architecture carries out. And Gonzalo, Alessandro, and Eric have been working, advising our students as for better ways to address the complexity of design, placemaking, site planning, and critical thinking all the way through the line of development of their projects. And I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to see the results of the workshop and how many useful insights you guys have been able to convey into our students. It's been really a growth experience to me. To be able to accompany you in this process and see how the students also make good meaning of what they share with you. And I don't know, this year has been different, right? We've been experiencing at an international level many overarching crises, and this pretty much inspired me some months ago to write a small reflection for the newspaper here that I titled Planning for Which World? We're planning for which kind of world? Because different from the common understanding, the premises over which we plan, if we plan as societies, whenever we plan, are changing radically. And this made me connect some dots. We have scaling wars. We have a new paradigm shift as AI tools now are available to the masses, to the common people. And we have concerns about this. Some people say we should be worried that something called general artificial intelligence comes along and bring some perils to humankind. And then some people speak about technological singularity in not so hopeful terms as well. And then we have the expectations of future pandemics, for example, in the coming world. We already had an environmental crisis. I mean, we already had many reasons to be worried about. I would like to start by asking you for your opinion on how this new world, because it's a new world, could be having an impact, positive or negative, over architectural education. So whoever wants to start providing an appreciation about this is welcome to start.
Well, I think it's a difficult question, actually. What I think probably is a question that has been involving many times from all along the time, I think. For my thinking, probably this kind of paradigm
shift.
Yes, has been occurring all along the time. If you're thinking about, for example, Alessandro's presentation, as I find very interesting, the cities has been existing many time ago, and the problems and the complexity at the end has been the same. What it changed is the society and the conflicts all along the time that is occurring. But the complexity, the essential complexity of the city has been not changing so much. We have been having the same needs as humans and having the same changes as we need, maybe in terms of communications. I think the communications, this changes the city in whole the structure of the city.
Yeah, definitely.
Is something like we have to face like for example, technology is changing the things, but the essential things of the city, I think, for my vision, has been the same as humans in terms of course, of complexity.
Yes, following up what Gonzalo was saying, yes, I agree that there are two elements that for me are particularly relevant in this historical moment. One is what you said. So the problem we have is to define, or let's say describe, this complexity. So it's not about what this complexity is, but how we can describe in a way that as architects or planners, we are able to prepare strategies that respond to this complexity. As you said, the world is somehow cracking like a piece of ice in different directions. So we know where the crack starts, but we don't know where this crack is going and how this is going, in which way this crack is going to break the ice. So the point is, in this context, how able we are to define strategies that understand the problem but keep the response to this problem open. This is the first thing. The second thing is what we already have the chance to discuss in the occasion of We Are Out of Time event, which, as you know, but for the public, is about a project promoted by the Italian Ministry of Culture regarding sustainability in terms of future city. And the accent in that series of events where you were a keynote speaker was that we have technology, we have the knowledge, we have ideas. The problem is that we need to start thinking that these ideas need to be applied in such a short frame of time, because the achievements are very far to be achieved in terms of sustainable goal. We were talking about that at this moment, the United Nations agenda is talking about the need to achieve the goal before 2030, and we are less than 80%, or a little bit more than 80% are missing. So the problem is, how can we do things, and we can do these things urgently, and how much responsible we are. In this sense, and this is my last comment about this, is also the discussion about artificial intelligence could be linked to this, because I appreciate the fact that the fear of an instrument that in a way is destabilizing our knowledge or our idea of the workflow, our idea of collaborating with each other. But every time that we are stopping and starting thinking, oh, the fear of artificial intelligence substituting our role as architect, or in a way creating a threat to human species in general, I don't find this appropriate, because in this moment I think we have been good enough to arm ourselves without artificial intelligence. So worst case scenario, maybe because artificial intelligence works with a certain level of speed, which is exponential. Maybe if we don't make mistake in using that instrument, maybe we can harness its potential. But of course, it's an instrument like any other. So the problem is not the instrument. The problem is always our interpretation and the modality in which we decide to use this instrument.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that to segue into this, in regards to our field, architectural education in particular, I think that having been involved myself and our others here in earlier revolutions into digital, and how it was supposed to be something really negative, and a lot of people had sort of reactionary, cautious feelings about how the rapid evolution of digital technologies would challenge negatively and impact negatively how we design and build architecture. Having been through this and being involved actively in pioneering some of these things, I am not pioneering anything in artificial intelligence applied to design, but I'm seeing happening and experiment a little bit with it. And I feel like it's it's the same thing all over again in terms of fear, But in other ways, I am concerned with what happens with our mechanisms of thinking and creating. If you think of how much, for instance, we depend on our GPS navigation devices to the point that we cannot even remember how to go from A to B if we don't turn that machine on, right?
Yeah.
Likewise, my concern is that our dependence on mechanisms that are outside ourselves for imagining things can begin to also hamper our capacity to operate in an associative way, which is something that I know Alessandro always likes and me too. I enjoy thinking that we are always this kind of associative minds, that our capacity to create in that regard is extraordinary. My only concern with artificial intelligence is that it may have a midterm or longer term impact on how we operate, how our psyche operates in terms of extrapolation from imagining to being able to articulate and instrumentalize, right? Because we will lose skills, I believe. Some skills begin to be lost, but other things might be gained. So in the end, we don't know what it could be extraordinary, I'm not an exponent use of AI, but I have colleagues who use it a lot, and but I'm yet to see how we can really advance our capacities, our skills to instrumentalize things based on these new devices, new means.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think as Westerners, we have the capacity, and at least it has been so through history, to store our experiences in our archives. And I think I reflect upon this because I'm sure we have all learned so much out of the last pandemic, for example, to cite an example. And it comes to my mind that somehow we will manage to also create a significant body of knowledge out of the current crisis, as diverse as they are, if we keep on being capable of storing knowledge. We will store knowledge, and we will manage to transfer this knowledge at a generational basis. So that takes me to a next question. How does architecture look like in the coming world, where we have already learned about the pros and cons of pandemic policies, in a world where fragmentation is like the new axiom, regional and I wouldn't like to think about this, but sometimes we also have the impression that sub-regional and maybe sub-national fragmentation could take place somewhere in the world in the next 10 to 15 years. How does architecture look like in this new world? Because we'll still need these formalized social contracts that we call buildings and public spaces, for example. Anyone? How does that type of architecture for this new world look like? Will look like?
Well, and I think you say something very interesting. The amount of data that we have is available now is actually very difficult to manage. And something that I'm worried is that every day passing by, the data and all the information that everybody of us is collecting, and also as well as artificial intelligence is helping to save all that data, will be more difficult for us to access because, yeah, is a huge size of data. And but on the other side, in the world, the architecture still be as handcrafted. We need people to build the cities, and that's our role. We need intelligence to manage artificial intelligence in order to help us to manage that big amount of data. I think if we could do that, maybe it could be a very good thing. Avoiding, for example, in the pandemics, as I saw, the virtualization of a space may probably, for me, is the most significant danger for students, as well is a very big challenge for us as professors, because we need a space as, I don't think we have the technology to virtualize the space as we can feel, smell, or think about are the feelings that we can actually transmit in a virtual space. But until that time come, maybe in the future, I don't know how many years it will take that, probably that will be the starting point in which architecture and our role as professionals in space could be like some kind of paradox that we need to manage and think what we should do about this.
Yeah, interesting. And what new needs of the population we serve could be answered or addressed by architecture in these coming years, considering new technologies and new knowledge that we have been acquiring?
Well, for me, certainly from a certain point of view, one of the paradigms that we are discussing more, how can I say, more urgently is the paradigm of the relationship between, we have been discussing especially the Biennale. This was one of the main topics, is about the negotiation between the concepts of artificiality and naturality, nature and artificial. In my opinion, this is one of the questions of the future. So it's true, we will need a city, we will need buildings, but we could start thinking that a building can be cultivated instead of built, or that nature can be built instead of cultivated. So there is a fragmentation in the idea of the complexity of the world that can be synchronic, as you said today, and I would not say that is a bad per se, this disorder that we are seeing. But the reason why I see this positively is because allow us to see that this fragmentation, this diversity was already there in a diachronic way. So we simply neglected to see that. In the past, this diversity was there, and we tried not to make everything working so that everything was one thing and was the thing that we were expecting to happen. It's an evolutionary concept. We have discussed this previously. And I think that in this context, the main problem will be not to think anymore as architect, how can I respond to these needs of the people in that moment? But how can I design something that is open enough to respond to needs that I am unable to foresee today? So there is a change in the way we see design that should be considered a priority for me. So how can I design? Let's say, in simple words, what I'm trying to say is that maybe the architects should become more genetist and less orthopedician, or let's say working as orthopedic thing. So it's more about understanding the genotype of the architecture and how to do this. So in a way, we probably have to accept that the Promethean ambition to be able to solve the problem for the others is sometimes too ambitious, and we can be able to prepare the things so that what we do is can respond positively to the needs of the people. And technology, I think, could be an incredible tool to do so in different way.
For me, I think that for many years now, I think there is decline on the kind of relevance of architecture or architects in ultimately what cities or chunks of cities or buildings end up looking like. The agency is challenged, because, for instance, if you look for, there's a project that comes out on a newspaper. The information is about the developers. These developers are doing this building, but it's never about the architects. The architects become one more of many players that are necessary and less, more and more less necessary, given that we have other ways of involving creativity in the design process. So that to me, it's a particular problem that's not new, but it will be, and it's exacerbated by the capacities that AI will liberate for people that are not architects. That is something real. And on the other hand, I'm more with Alessandro in trying to think, for us, the challenge is to rethink where can we make a mark, where our contribution can be relevant. And I think it's, even also for projects that have been involved with Alessandro and other people associated with Alessandro, I became much more tuned to thinking about systems that are not 100% for humans, that are actually going to feed back on humanity, but thinking about how architects can displace their attention more towards infrastructures for living organisms that are needed actually to feed back on humans. I think there's a lot of opportunity in that field, and some people are actually working, researching on that, and trying to see how one can articulate real structures.
That's interesting. I remember last year, National Geographic published, beginning of last year, published 2 articles on how important are for the space career, for the space industry, foldable structures similar to origami. And how important those structures are to play roles of a diverse spectrum that include energy caption and perhaps also to satisfy needs for space containing and space storing, and maybe architecture for the outer space. Can we envision next steps for architecture to be addressing needs for an outer space community soon, maybe within the next 50 years? We just saw 2 weeks ago a successful 5th attempt for a SpaceX large rocket to land. And it makes me think that we are approaching, we are nearer and nearer to be discussing about how human settlements could and should take place in ground outside planet Earth. And when I say this, I remember thinkers and engineers like Buckminster Fuller, who constantly were thinking about Earth as a spaceship itself.
Chuck Hoverman as well.
Yeah. How architecture for grounds outside the Earth should look like, or should be envisioned. Let's say envisioned, because the looking like and the appearance could be subject to many considerations. But what characteristics should this new architecture, in very general terms, you think should gather within itself? If there is something to be reflected upon.
Well, of course, there's a lot of people invested in exploring smart materials or materials whose geometry is able to enact certain capacities or perform certain ways. Amongst those, folding but I think for me, honestly, I just have a hard time thinking about the reality of life elsewhere, not here, especially when there's so many amazing aliens
Inside.
to be discovered here, still here, which have been here way before us. which have different sizes and scales, but aliens nonetheless, for which we can still have an active biological involvement with. And we do have, even we don't know. Our body is full of them, full of bacteria and aliens, right? But more than that, actually, I would actually think it's human. So I think that that our capacity to think, my own capacity to think beyond the reach of the life on Earth is very limited, honestly.
Yeah, I agree with both in the sense that I think that the one aspect that for me it's interesting in the space exploration is what we can learn regarding us. From time to time there is always a student that wants to study something going to the space, and I find interesting that every time the student starts from the idea, because our planet, the problem, let's say environmental problem, are so tough that we need to find another planet, which I find peculiar because the environmental conditions in our planet are by far the best that we can find in another context. So this idea that we can go away and find something else is bizarre in some way.
I remember some comments attributed to Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing. Like he was sort of saying, if we have technology to make a planet like Mars look like Earth, then we have technology to make a planet like ours turn into a more sustainable one.
Absolutely.
Something like that.
You were going exactly to the point. So, I mean, why we should terraform Mars? Because the planet Earth is becoming a desert, because it's much easier to terraform.
It's the dream of real estate developers.
Come on. Exactly. I mean, to find. I think it's a communication item, but I mean, still, it's easier to terraform the Sahara Desert, because still, you have the flare of the sun and the atmosphere is still there. So this is bizarre. Nevertheless, we don't have to underestimate the fact that we are human. We are narrative species. So many of the technology that we use today, they come from the attempt to arrive to the moon. So this is kind of exaptive methodology that push us to go in one direction, but then we use the thing for a completely different purpose. And when you discuss about the flight and the sail, this is something that I'm particularly interested about, the folding, because apparently the only way we have to arrive to Proxima and the Centauri and the planet that theoretically could be more similar to ours is, there are of course several theories, but because of the distance and the energy needed, one of the hypotheses to use this folding sail shape that energy and they transform. And I find this extremely intriguing for land architecture, because this means, are we, again, answer to the question of
architecture outside.
Tyrone.
Neil deGrasse.
Neil deGrasse. So, well, this will be amazing to find the possibility to build architecture in which the capability of collecting energy is far beyond the need of the energy that we spend. So if we think in the same way, we will have already solved all the problems. So a foldable structure that I found this idea very fascinating for our purposes. The second aspect about the travel is because doing something which is almost impossible obliges us to think about something which is possible. And this has to do again with the negotiation between artificial and nature, because all the idea of this long spaceship is about how to recreate the closed loop system. So, as you said before, we are not able to keep the Earth as it is, but we are imagining that we are able to build an artificial something that does the same thing without any atmosphere or using technology. But this, again, it's very interesting, and it's part of several research that we have done, for instance, for the Venice Biennale 2021, where Eric and I also have been working together. So the idea of building a terraforming rover, which is exactly like the one, more low-tech than the one that we use in the in Mars, but it operates in Sicily, terraforming Sicily, or building Genome and Borboleta, which are an attempt to not only, and this is the part that is more interesting probably for us, not only to engage with the idea that there is a symbiosis between human and other species on this planet, but that this symbiosis is also characterized by what we call beautiness or aesthetics. And this is part of the feedback phenomena that Eric was mentioning. So it's not only a matter of survival or negotiation with nature. It's also part that if there is one thing that it's our life worth is to live into something that we call beauty, but it's something more complex than this. Our society aims at that. Does it make any sense to live in a place where we are able to feed ourselves in some form? To do what? This is the question. To do what? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an intriguing discussion. Many people consider we might be soon capable enough to continue this dream from Jules Verne from the 19th century to achieve the amazing journey to the moon and beyond. And if we do that, how is architecture going to look like? What would be the role? And those are very intriguing questions. But
if I may add, I'm sorry to interject, but I think that's an interesting statement, because for me, the idea of going to Mars or kind of creating an estrangement, I think that the most beautiful challenge is to create an estrangement within reality. To the real power of our design and imagination and capacity to actually execute it is to create that level of surrealist or alien-looking or kind of strangely performing architecture within the against and within the normal. You know, for me, I don't need to go to Mars to create something extraordinary. I think it's bringing Mars here that is more exciting, at least to me.
Yeah, I think this is something, the most wonderful thing about design, I think, because design is actually making the conditions as we need, as we can transform the conditions of the environment as we need. So we can invent the conditions. We are not living in Mars right now, but we can imagine to living in Mars, and we can design even, as Santo says, without living in Mars. So the design, not projected only in architecture, but in every object as we need as humans, is actually trying to achieve the conditions of any environment. Could be an object or could be as well as an architectural object. So even if that's also, I think maybe the virtual reality could help us to trying to imagine some very difficult conditions and see what happens. And also is a very good thing about maybe the technology will help us to see if it's possible or not. Because the conditions will be easily invented or created or even projected. So I agree that maybe design will not change in that sense.
Okay. It's been an amazing conversation. I don't want to close this session today without first stating that we should continue this conversation somehow. I don't know how, but I feel like there are many things, many subjects we could be discussing on a dialectical, productive way. And number two, I would like your opinion, if you can make a suggestion on each one, of course, different. What skill do you estimate would be very useful for a student in the coming 10 years And the same, what skill would be very useful for a teacher of architecture in the coming 10 years, let's say? What are your considerations?
I can start this. I think that the more we are equipped with technology that allows us to envision extremely complex and beautifully resolved images, the higher the challenge is, and then on being able to articulate that through a certain workflow that will allow you to build that. I think that the move should not be away from the craft of building, but actually to achieving, say, if you imagine something through AI that is beautifully resolved in itself, but it's so complex that it's almost impossible to think how to build it, then we're really throwing the ball. And now we have to run and learn to catch that ball. Because that, to me, is the ultimate challenge to me. If we're using AI, artificial intelligence to envision things of a very high level of complexity that will be almost impossible to draw, that is exactly where the challenge is. It's almost impossible to draw. Then how do we push ourselves and push the skills that we need to be able to, as we are architects, and we dream of making stuff, right? Of making spaces, not just only creating a beautiful drawing of the spaces, you know? That to me was initially the challenge when the digital revolution sort of began, and now the challenge is even exacerbated, you know, and put more to the test. So I think the skills will be to develop the kind of workflows from the digital artificial intelligence tools to envision, and artificial intelligence tools to articulate every step towards fabrication and making and inhabiting and feeling within those things, you know, having real experiences.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Yeah, for not repeating the aspects that I totally agree, it is more related to the skills and knowledge and instrument that we have available, let's say, discussing this from, let's say, more an historical perspective. I would say that in every time of crisis, excluding the talent and technology and the skills, I would say that has been very crucial for creative people to do 2 or 3 things. The first is the capability to see the world with different eyes, unconventional eyes. So in this sense, we could say that Leonardo da Vinci or Neo of Matrix are the same. People that were able to listen to hear the background noise of something that was moving in the background. They have, both of them, a formation, an education, a training that was a little bit tangential to the mainstream that allowed them to listen to this background noise. This is, I think, will be very important.
To be critical, to be very critical.
Yeah, very critical and also, let's say, unconventional, radical, but at the same time also brave. These are go together. I think that the sensitivity allowed this subject to be critical, radical, and brave. At the same time, this is the, I know that you know that I was going there, is those that are less prepared, because if I analyze this type of people in this crisis period, they also have these other second characteristics. They were not the genius or the people intended to have a deep knowledge in one specific field. They are the people who have been able to empower to use associative thinking in the broadest way. So where people that have been able to change the perspective of what a discipline means. What I'm trying to say is that it's probably going to be more successful in the future, not an architect who is a good architect, could be a good architect, but the person who is able to say, well, maybe there is a discipline which is not architecture, but is not engineers, not biology, it's something else, and I'm linking the dots and I'm building a new set of taxonomies and I operate there. As I said, if we want to call this historically, these are polygraph people, that they were philosopher, I don't know, they were engineers, they were architects, they were basically people that will able to deal more with association rather than with knowledge in a linear way.
Interesting.
And not to go beyond, because I totally agree with what you said, we have to go ahead, because you know me, this is not enough. I would like to speak at least another 2 hours now.
There are many ways to go beyond.
Exactly,
many different paths to go
I
with.
feel now frustrated that I have to stop, but we have to do now. But promise that we go ahead in
Yeah,
some
yeah.
way.
Of
'Cause
course, of
otherwise, I
course.
feel this. Sorry, Gonzalo.
No,
Maybe
it's okay.
tonight after the lecture.
Yeah,
Hopefully the
yeah.
lecture will give us more to think
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's a very difficult question and it's also a very difficult challenge. In the means of, for example, as you said, the teaching and learning is actually is not a thing I think about know how to learn or know how to teach, because it depends a kind of adaptation between the person who transmit and the person to receive. If you see maybe like 50 years ago, the conception of the term receiver and the giver of knowledge were totally different. And that changed. So for example, the people who transmit the knowledge should be adapt to the people who is receiving the knowledge, because the way of thinking is completely different, I think.
Yeah, definitely,
Adaptation.
definitely. It has been an amazing conversation. And as you mentioned before, I think it takes an amazing amount of vision to both think of a possible future in the Earth, as we were discussing before, as it takes to envision a future outside the Earth. I think we as a generation have the duty and the opportunity to realize things that previous generations could only envision with optimism, with hope, and now we can do that with information. And then comes along this kind of perspectives, emerging perspectives that we should be investing in a better planet as much as we want to, of course, travel abroad outside the atmosphere, which is also noble and intriguing. But I am so curious about the kind of response that we as architects will be able to provide, or will be need to provide in the near future to new needs and newcomers, our descendants somehow. So again, let's continue this discussion somehow, somewhere. And it's been an amazing time. This Unibe talk is now coming to its end. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Eric Goldenberg. Thank you very much, Alessandro Melis. Thank you very much, Gonzalo Hoyos. Let's now go into your conference in a few minutes. So,
I will be discussing the vernacular in Mars.
oh, interesting. I'll be eager to learn.